All right, guys. Again, I'm Josh with Soul Studios, and I am back with part two of the Ultimate U87 Shootout. And what we're going to do today is we're going to take the examples that were in part one, and we're going to add two more examples. I'm going to do an acoustic and vocal of a short clip of a song called Ghost of Jackson Square by Edwin McCain, and then acoustic and vocal of a song called Very Good Advice, which is actually from Alice in Wonderland. But I've always liked the lyrics to that song. There's a really talented artist named Tanner Patrick that did a super cool version of that. It's like completely reworked the original. And so after I heard his version, the version that I'm doing here is definitely heavily influenced by him. So I did everything I could to make sure that this is a fair shootout, because I don't want to hurt a manufacturer by not giving a good representation of their microphone. You know, that's, I think as YouTube reviewers, we really need to be careful not to do that. So what I did was, for Hallelujah and for Ghost of Jackson Square, I set the mics up in sort of like a star pattern to where I could sing in the space between, but I was hitting all the capsules as evenly as I could. But, you know, that kind of shootout does have its shortcomings. And the way that I like to do shootouts personally, when I'm tracking someone and I'm deciding which mic to use on them, is to get them to sing through each mic individually. And the reason for doing that is because I like to know how that person feels when they sing through the mic, how they interact with the mic. If I have two mics set up, one sounds a little bit better in the control room, but the artist says, hey, I feel a lot more comfortable singing through this other mic. I almost always go with the one that they feel the most comfortable singing through, because you can EQ and compress and do things to match the tone from one mic to another fairly well. But what you can't do is insert some kind of emotion or feeling that the artist wasn't able to emote because the microphone didn't give them the flexibility to do so. So I did both ways on here, and I will let you know right ahead of those examples what's going on where, so that you know what you're hearing. But I thought by doing it that way, we could cover all the bases and maybe address some of the shortcomings where other mic shootouts may have fallen short. In all the shootouts, there's no high pass filter or pad engaged. The Warm has it, Serrano, the Neumanns have it, but the BeesNeez does not have that option. So I just left that out of all of them. And if there's any high pass filter or anything going on, it was done with a plug-in after it was tracked. And where that's done, I will let you know. One thing I did want to mention, the kind of glaring omission from this shootout is the Stam Audio 87. And the only reason I excluded that one is because I reached out to Joshua at the beginning of this and told him what I was doing, and he let me know that he's working on a Mark IV version of that mic. And so I didn't want to include one that is going to soon be replaced. But what I'll do is stay in touch with him, get that new mic when it comes out, and maybe try to do these same songs or somehow incorporate it into this shootout at that point and see how it stacks up. But that's the only reason why the Stam wasn't included. For all examples, if I used the Antelope MP32, I used that on all the rest of them. If I used the Shadow Hills on the iron setting, I kept it on the iron setting. I will notate in the examples what the chain was, but just know for the examples where I sang into all mics at once, I use the same kind of cable, the same length of cable, the same preamp, and the same converter. So I really did everything I could to give every mic its best chance to be on equal footing. So if you've somehow landed here before you watched part one, I'd really encourage you to pause. And I'm going to put the link up here somewhere and say, go check out the blind version first, because I think it's really important to put aside our biases of what a Neumann is or vintage or whatever other buzzword you want to throw out there. And I really want you to judge these microphones on their sonics alone. So if you haven't watched part one, please go do that really quickly. And then it's short anyway. Check that one out. Then head back over here for the reveal. If you did watch part one, I'm excited to build on that. First of all, to tell you which microphones were which. We're going to do the reveal here right away. So as I get into the examples, they're going to be in the same order that they were in video one. It's just in parentheses, I'm going to tell what the mic actually is and not just mic A, B, etc. All right, so let's hear all of these audio examples. We're going to just roll through them. I will put chapter markers so you can jump back and forth and compare however you want to. And then I'll hop on again at the end and have some closing thoughts. All right, guys, let's hear the rest of the shootout. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. 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 Ghosts on the streets today, doorways of Jackson Square. Ghosts on the streets today, doorways of Jackson Square. Ghost on the streets today, doorways of Jackson Square. Ghost on the streets today, doorways of Jackson Square. Ghost on the streets today, doorways of Jackson Square. I give myself very good advice, but I very seldom follow it. That explains the trouble I'm always in. Be patient is very good advice, but the wait it makes me curious. And I love the change, should something strange begin. Give myself very good advice, but I very seldom follow it. That explains the trouble I'm always in. Be patient is very good advice, but the wait it makes me curious. And I love the change, should something strange begin. I give myself very good advice, but I very seldom follow it. That explains the trouble I'm always in. Be patient is very good advice, but the wait it makes me curious. And I love the change, should something strange begin. Give myself very good advice, but I very seldom follow it. That explains the trouble I'm always in. Be patient is very good advice, but the wait it makes me curious. And I love the change, should something strange begin. I give myself very good advice, but I very seldom follow it. That explains the trouble I'm always in. Be patient is very good advice, but the wait it makes me curious. And I love the change, should something strange begin. All right, guys, that is the end of the 87 shootout. I hope you enjoyed the reveal. I hope you got most of them right. And I try not to influence you too much, but I did want to say with this, 9 times out of 10, when I compare a vintage piece of gear to a clone, I've gone with the vintage piece. I do want to get a little bit more opinionated here than I normally do. And really my motivation is to try to save you money and to try to help you, because I've been really seriously recording since 1994. And I've gone through a ton of mics and a ton of gear, and I've gotten caught up in the hype more times than I would like to admit. And at this point, I have to say, after going through this shootout, that I think the lust for a vintage 87 is probably something we should put aside. No offense if you own one. I'm not trying to drive the price down, although the price, along with nearly everything else in the last year, has gone through the roof. But I just can't see paying $4,500, $5,000 for a vintage 87 when, man, Serrano, Warm, BeesNeez are making killer mics. They're all different enough to where I might actually end up with a pair of all three of those. And the 87ai is a good mic, for what it is. But again, price range, there's just no comparison. I mean, you could literally buy 5 or 6 of the Warm or the Serrano for the price that you're going to pay for an AI, and then 10 of them for what you're going to pay for a vintage 87. So, like I said, most times I have gone with vintage gear when I had to make the choice. But I got to tell you on this one, I think it's time to just put this aside. I mean, if you come across a great price on the 87, have at it. If you don't, get one of these more affordable options and move on to another area that will be more beneficial for your studio. So anyway, if you disagree, tell me in the comments. I want you to ultimately decide what is best for you, but I do feel really strongly about going into debt for recording, especially in the day and age that we live in, where streaming services, the royalties and all are so much less than what they used to be. I'd really hate to see somebody fork out $5,000 on a vintage 87 when they could take that money and spread it around and get so much more for it. So anyway, I'll close out by saying, man, Warm Audio, you were the biggest surprise for me. I think you've made a killer mic. I never heard the first version, but what you've done on the R2 here is really a fantastic mic. Same thing for Carlos at Serrano Audio and for Ben at BeesNeez. I can tell you guys really, really spent a lot of time on making these mics. Like I said before, I've been recording seriously for money since 1994. And feel free to leave a comment about like, hey, there's no way, you don't look old enough. But I have been. And I want you guys, anybody that's younger, that's newer to recording, that's watching this, I want you to understand how much better of a microphone something like the Warm WA87 or the Serrano or the BeesNeez. It is so much better than what I had available to me for the same price. When I first got started, I had a Rode NT2, I had an AKG something 3000. I don't even remember the model number. They were much more expensive than this at the time, and they were not great mics at all. They were really bright. And I had 8 tracks to record with on my Roland VS880. Well, even before that, 4 tracks on the Tascam 4-track. You record on both sides of the cassette. So if you've got a DAW, if you're working in Logic or Reaper or something, and you need one good mic, and you've got $500 you can throw at a Warm, or $600 at a BeesNeez, or $700 or $800 at a Serrano. You have tools that are so far beyond what many of us had when we were starting out in the 90s or the 80s as far as home studio. So I just want you to be able to move forward with confidence, take advantage of some of these amazing, affordable new tools that we have. And where I think vintage is still the ultimate holy grail, I will let you know. In times that I don't think that's the case, like now. And I should also say, this is not the only vintage 87 I've ever used. It's the second one that I've owned. And both times I was able to get a hold of ones that were in good condition. So I'm not just saying, oh, I got this one mic and whatever. But I really think in this case, we can put this one to bed. Having said that, if you listen to the examples and you thought, man, that vintage really sounds like how I want to hear things, and you have the funds to do that, and it's not going to put you in a hole and put that pressure of debt on you, then by all means do it. But if you're building your recording gear, I say pick one of these newer clones that you like the most and get a pair, and don't look back. You got your drum overheads, you've got your acoustic mic, you can put it on your guitar amp and you can sing through it, amongst many other things. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. Like I said, I don't usually get this opinionated on a video, but I feel pretty strongly about this one, especially when the financials are so different between a clone and the vintage. All right, guys, I've talked enough. I appreciate your time. If you got value out of this video, if it was something useful for you, please check the description below in the video. There's a link there to donate. You can donate via PayPal or crypto, which is actually preferred these days for me personally. But I don't have anything to sell you. I've got these files. It's just a Dropbox link you can check out that is free. You can join the mailing list. But having said that, a lot of work, and especially in this video, a lot of finances went into making it. So if you feel compelled to, feel free to throw me a bone through the donate link, and it's much appreciated. All right, guys, until next time, have a great one, and I'll see you again soon.